Well, I think Thomas Merton had a lot to do with it, because I had read Seeds of Contemplation, and I read Seven Story Mountain, and it was such an intriguing life, and I thought, man, that's real Christianity. That's what I really want. And then too, I was in the post-World War II era, and it seemed to me that everybody was getting more and more materialistic, upwardly mobile, even my own family. And I thought, man, that's not what life's about. It's more about what's in here, in the spiritual life. And so I just decided to take off and go. I guess it was sort of like the hippies of the 60s. You just wanted to drop out and go someplace where there was a meaningful purpose for living. Mm-hmm. I was only 18 when I went in there, so I adapted better than I would have today. Say I wouldn't be able to do it, but and two, I was so idealistic, and then there's a certain glamour. I mean, the white robes and the silence, and they were all young. The oldest guy in there was 36, and I was 18, and so they were all young people, and they were all very idealistic people, and we all did it together. When the bell rang at 2 in the morning, we were all out and in church in 15 minutes. My experience was getting up at 2 a.m. every morning. Yeah, and you got up, went downstairs, washed your face and hands, and went directly to the church. And we started the divine office, which means the praises of God. And that lasted for about an hour. It was chanted just, straight verbally with the few little cadences. But on feast days, it was all sung. Everything was sung. And because we did all of our praying before the sun came up. And then when the sun came up, we were out in the fields working, or on the building, whichever one we were doing. Well, it was called barley water. They made it with barley grain, and it looked like coffee, but it tasted like something else. I don't know what to describe it like. It wasn't very good, but it was hot. And one piece of bread with no butter. It was homemade bread. We made it ourselves. It's greatly misunderstood. I mean, you see these things on television of two monks eating their cereal, and one of them says, shh, because his cereal is popping. Well, it's not like that at all. In fact, it's not really a vow. It's simply an observance. And the reason when you have 100 men living together and there's no privacy, you don't have a private room, you just have a study hall, and then you're at work. And if everybody was talking all the time, it would be a big distraction. So you weren't supposed to talk to anyone except your superior and the boss at work, who was usually a lay brother. And we never talked to each other, never. Couldn't show each other pictures or write each other notes, nothing. That would all be a distraction from your contemplation and from being recollected and aware of the presence of God. And we were nice to each other, and we could make little signs. We had our own sign language that came from the 11th century when the order was founded. And it was not the American Sign Language. I later found out that it came from the French Sign Language, because the order was founded in France. I didn't talk for 17 years. Can I say that word? Okay. Well, I was a kid, and the boards that we slept on bumped against each other, and there was just like wallboard between us in a little tiny cell. And this monk in back of me, Father Peter, he coughed all the time. He had a bad catarrh. And so I put up with it most of the time when I was conscious, but every time I'd fall off to sleep, he'd start up again. And that was getting to me. But then finally, I went into a deep, deep sleep. And all at once, he went, and I had my rosary beads in my hand, and I just threw them against the wall and said, shut up, you son of a bitch. It got real quiet after that. No, they didn't start laughing. They just got real, real quiet. And there wasn't another sound until the bell went off at 2 a.m. And when I came out of my cell, the monk that slept in the cell next to me, not Father Peter, but one next to me, he looked at me and went, "Congrats." But the abbot called me over the next day and said, "Son, did you call Father Peter a son of a bitch last night in the dormitory?" "Yes, Reverend Father, I did, but I was asleep. I mean, I was half asleep." I was apologizing. "And I'm sorry, and I'll apologize to him. I'll do this to him." And he said, "Well, that's all right, son. And who is this Miss Connor you talk about in your sleep?" "Yeah, it was a friend of my mother's." Actually, it was the mother of my girlfriend. "Pax intrantibus, peace to those who enter here." And that sums it all up, John. It's, monks don't look down on the world. They're the most understanding and compassionate people you would ever want to meet. If you want to talk to somebody, go and find you a good monk to talk to. But it's like in the world, you're always striving and pushing and trying to get ahead, trying to keep up, and concerned about what people think about you, this, that, and the other, And the monastery just sort of frees you from all of that. I mean, you don't have to worry about what you wear, what you eat. You don't have to, you do hard work, but you don't get any salary for it. And your whole day is concerned with living the rule of St. Benedict, which is a rule that says it's a school of the Lord's service. But St. Benedict, his idea was that living together is a school of charity, that you learn to bear with each other's infirmities and to consider each other before you consider yourself. Like, always look at the other person and say, what's best for that person? Well, that's a hard thing to do. But it would be good in society if we did that. So it's sort of like an ideal society, trying to live the teachings of Jesus, turning the other cheek, living in peace, being concerned about the spiritual values, what the dignity and worth of human beings. And of course, God is love, and that's what it's about. Well, it was, yeah, because that means that you're concerned for God. Well, Jesus said, love God and love each other. Those are the only two laws that he laid down. And he's, that's what it is. I mean, that's what Christianity is. If you wanted to sum it up, somebody said, what is Christianity? It's love God and love each other. Well, the first one was about 65 years old. And the rest of us were all under 35 or 36, somewhere around there. And he was a fatherly figure. A nice, kind of heavy-set man, patriarchal looking, and just he loved everybody. He was kind to everybody, and when you went in to see him, he could almost sense what kind of mood you were in when you came in there to see him. It was just I can't praise him enough, because he really was a father to me, and he's a father to every one of us. Real caring, loving man. And see, those things make up for the hardships of the life. And I think the hardships are like just stripping life of any of the luxuries and the distractions. Yeah. By the way, he died at the General Chapter in France. It's the General Chapter of the Whole Order. And when he came home, see, we weren't buried in coffins. We were just buried in our habit, and not embalmed or anything. They just laid you out and then they'd bury you the next day. But he came home in one of those old European coffins, like that, and it had a little glass window in the front. And by the time he got home, there was a crack in his jaw here. It began to decompose. And I thought of Father Zosima. That Father Zosima began to decompose, and the people said, oh, well, maybe he wasn't a saint. And I said, no, he's too real. He's human, just like Father Zosima. And that's just what he was. Down to earth. One time he mentioned in chapter that somebody, when he was traveling, he had to go somewhere, and they served him a drink, a cocktail, had whiskey in it. And so one of the brothers raised their hand and said, Reverend Father, what did you do with it? He said, I blessed it and then drank it. Well, he wasn't a reformer, he was a liberator. See, he had the idea that we needed better clothes. Like we wore these old-fashioned underwear that came from the 11th century underneath our habits that tied here. We were supposed to, but you know the story. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But, the new abbot, yeah. First thing he did was put out jockey shorts and T-shirts for all of us. Boy, that was something. I guess Kmart cashed in on that one. Excuse me. And anyway, and then like jackets for work and overalls. Instead of wearing the habit at work, we wore overalls. And then he got a good cook that put some butter in the vegetables and made them taste better. And so, of course, we never had meat or fish or eggs. But you could doctor up vegetables, make them taste pretty good. And the soup, everything got better. And then pretty soon he wanted us to lose the image of being these austere monks who were separated from the world. So he started inviting Atlanta in. Come have a reception after midnight mass on Christmas and entertain them all and have refreshments for them. Well, to me that was kind of a shock, because that wasn't what Trappist life was about. And he was just more like a brother. Yeah, he was more egalitarian. We're in here together. And then he was, in some ways, he was very permissive. I mean, he didn't enforce the rule much. And that, of course, that happened right before Vatican II. And so there was a loosening up of things anyway. But I didn't like that. I mean, I missed my father. But I was maturing, and that's what this book is about. I think two things led to that. My mother's death, when I was not allowed to go to her funeral, because we were never allowed to leave. And I had just written to my mother, and she was as far as I knew, in good health. She just dropped dead after dinner one night. And I got a phone call in the morning saying she was dead, and that was it. I mean, I couldn't go to the funeral. I couldn't be with my family. And that was a heartbreaker. I mean, I cried for days, but didn't let anybody see me, of course. I cried mostly at night in my cell. But like that was a letdown. I mean, and then I began to think, this is cruel and inhuman, and I don't think this is right. And I think that was the beginning of my vocation, slipping. And the second one was the brothers Karamazov, because Aloysia was a monk, and Father Zosima, in talking to him, said, the works of love are what count. And Aloysius' brother, Ivan, was a big agnostic, didn't believe anything. And Father Zosima said, if you do the works of love, you don't have to worry about faith. And so Aloysius left the monastery and went out to do the works of love. And so my whole concept of Christianity is not a flight from the world, but an immersion in the world. Well, he was a brother. He was about my same age. He was wonderful, Al Miller. But he's not the typical psychiatrist. In fact, I don't think he would have gotten by in today's ethics rules for psychiatry or for psychologists, because he was so human. And he let you know he liked you. And he said, when you came in here, you were tense like this. And now you're just all laid back and easygoing. And so I attribute that to him. And so when I started thinking about leaving, he pretty much encouraged me. That'd be a good idea. I never did that, even in the novitiate. And so one day in a chapter of faults, when they could accuse you of breaking the rule, I had to prostrate. And when I got up, the abbot said, "What's wrong with Father Gabriel?" And some monk, you weren't supposed to look at him, they'd be in back of you. And he said, "He doesn't sleep in his habit at night." Well, I thought, well, how in the hell, how did he know that? And then I thought, well, maybe the curtain blew back and he saw that I didn't have my habit on. And so the abbot said, "See me in my room after, son." So when I went over there to see him, I thought, oh, Lord, they're going to send me home. And he said, "Son, I don't sleep in my habit either. I understand how you feel. That's rather unsanitary. So you tell the tailor, write him a note to give you a white robe and split it up the back so that you can sleep in it. And if your curtain blows, they won't know they'll think you got your habit on." So I said, okay. Well, I was doing that. About a couple of months later, we had a fire alarm during the night, and it was all wooden buildings. So we all had to jump up and evacuate. Well, I'm evacuating down the stairs. Somebody in back of me poked me on the shoulder and said, "Your butt's showing." But I never got proclaimed for that, because I guess they didn't know how to, they probably didn't know how to say what they saw that night, Yeah, I did. I wanted to to love people and care about people. And to be honest with you, that was the heart of my whole ministry. I never had any idea about politics or moving up in the church. It never entered my mind that that was part of the game. You know, you go from better and better parish. So I was in Appalachia for 5 or 6 years with the mountain people, and it was just wonderful. I loved them, and they loved me, and I just had a great time. And I never regretted leaving, although I'd go back every year and visit my friends, and I still do. In fact, I'm going down there next month. So I see them all. Now they can talk. So I get a big bunch of them in a circle. I sneak 1 or 2 of them out and take them to Atlanta for dinner.
And why was
because both
that?
times I was leaving a family that I loved. And, you know, it's like when you follow Christ, you leave everything behind, even the people you love the most, even your family. Well, this book is about growing up as a Catholic and getting over it. About the nuns in grade school, the priests in high school, seminary, and then about the church today. And that's when I lay into them.